So I'd like to introduce to us our guest speaker for the day. She is a career acceleration coach who has helped hundreds of professionals awaken their inner giant so that they can reach their definition of career success and fulfillment faster. She has coached over 250 doctors in Kenya and also in the diaspora via group lessons and also one-on-one coaching, guiding them as they navigate professional landmines with strategy and practicality. She has also served as a fractional head of customer experience for a global software as a service corporation. Before this, she was the national vice president of client experience in a global Fortune, where she led education and communication campaigns for the second largest health insurance program in the United States of America. She is also a senior director of a learning and development company where her team built and delivered curriculums that helped over 500,000 professionals develop their soft and technical skills to achieve career success. When she's not working, she can be found laughing, connecting with friends through a variety of activities, hosting a cultural podcast that explores ways of our pre-colonial ancestry, exploring in nature, and listening to some spiritual texts. In this next 2 hours or so, she will be able to guide us through the root cause of Dr. Burnout and also to help navigate and give us a couple of solutions to be able to mitigate the same. Without further ado, karibu sana Coach Tabitha Njeri.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Great. I am so excited to be here, and I'm so excited for what we're going to cover today. Pardon me, it's a little bit before midnight. So we're going to have a great time in the middle of the night. So I'm going to share my screen. Please feel free to chat. You can chat privately. You can send private chats. I'm really excited for what we're going to be doing here today. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can go ahead and jump in and get going on this really important topic that is extremely relevant to doctors, not only in Kenya, but doctors globally. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right. Can someone confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to kick off with a high-level review of what we did last time. We won't spend but about 10 minutes there. So I'm going to move very quickly because that recording exists. And then today we're then going to go and cover 4 distinct topics. The first we're going to talk about is energy management. And the reason we need to talk about this is because one of the things I hear people talk about all the time is the importance of work-life balance. And yet I'm going to be here challenging the notion of work-life balance and instead, or work-life integration is what some people call it, and instead introducing the concept of energy management to fuel you as you're doing your work. We're also going to do an assessment where you're going to be able to see that as a doctor today, are you headed into an energy crisis? And if you are headed into an energy crisis, what to do about it? We're then going to go and look at some solutions to burnout, right? That you can begin implementing right away. And then if we have time, I added a little bit of a delicious topic on handling workplace bullying, because that actually is part of the things that can contribute to burnout. So that's what we're going to be covering today. I'm excited to do this, but I need some energy from you. It's a little bit past, not a little, many hours past my bedtime. So can I have a few of you chatting, putting in the chat that you're ready? Type ready for me Send me some energy and let's do this. So go ahead and hit ready if you're ready and energized about today's topic. Thank you. I see two readies. Thank you. Only two of us are ready. Thank you for the readies. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Willis. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Dr. Wanjiko. I appreciate. Thank you, Barke. Thank you, Supa. Thank you, I really appreciate. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Langat. Thank you, Maureen. I appreciate the energy. So let's go ahead and jump in. As a quick reminder, in terms of what we talked about last time, we talked about some of the reasons why doctors are more likely to burn out as a profession compared to other, professions. We went into some of the core reasons, like you typically have mission-driven work. You're striving to extremely high standards of excellence, right? You have to deal with a lot of emotion and compassion in your role, right? And, you are also responsible for certain things that might be out of your control, right? Such as the healing of a patient sometimes. So we talked about why you're more likely to be burned out. Once we did that, we looked at some evidence, right, that you doctors are indeed burned out. And the way we looked at this evidence is we looked at an annual study in the US because directionally glean some insights into doctor burnout in Kenya based on this annual study that has been happening over 10 years. And this year in 2023, there were over 9,000 doctors lending a lot of credibility to this study, with 39% of these doctors being female, 59% of them being male, over 29 specialties. Pardon the dates. I meant August 22 to November 22 is when that was run, with a 95% confidence level and a really good margin of error at about 1%. So that's what we did last time. And as we looked at that, we looked at these doctors and we said directionally, how does this apply? So these doctors, these more than 9,000 doctors, with 52% of them being male, about 59, sorry, and 39% of them being female. I don't remember my numbers too well. We just saw them, right? 53% of doctors indicated that they were burned out, and 23% were depressed. But the reason why this was a big number was the shift or the jump from 2018, where the same corresponding numbers were at 42% and 15%. These doctors were actually asked which fields, right, or what specialties are most burned out. We looked at this in some level of detail, really realizing that in essence, almost all specialties experience burnout, but there are some, because of the intensity of the nature of their work, that actually experience a lot more burnout than others. Then they explored the topic of, are there more female or male doctors who are burned out? And we found that female doctors tend to be are more burned out compared to male doctors. And again, there's a lot of reason and color behind that, right? And some of the reasons why female doctors, again, this is in the US, but we can look at these trends, indicated that they are burned out is there were common comments like they have to constantly defend their authority, not only to their peers, but also to patients. They being overlooked for leadership opportunities, having different expectations of behavior between male doctors and female doctors, right? Being interrupted or talked over. Some of these things are the things we call microaggressions in the workplace, right? Organizations failing to uphold certain stated codes of conduct. Again, these were some of the reasons that made female doctors more burned out than male doctors. And, in Kenya, we naturally have even more nuances, beyond gender. In the US, we have race nuances, but in Kenya, we also have ethnic group nuances, right? So there's a lot of nuances that can go into some of this data. Now, the other question these doctors were asked is, how long have you been burned out? And what was really sad is to observe that burnout is actually persistent and pervasive with doctors. When you see that 30% had been burned out for more than 2 years, right? 32% for more than a year. right? Between a year and 2 years, and 25%, going on a year. So this is a persistent and pervasive issue in your field. Right? So then the doctors were asked, what contributes most to your burnout? And by the way, they're asked the same pattern of questions year over year, of course, with some additional nuances. This is a really interesting study to look at every year, right? And these are some of the reasons that were driving some of the burnout of the doctors, in the US. And I can say that when I think about the doctors I've talked to in Kenya, whether they are practicing doctors or not, some of the common themes are too many hours, right? Perhaps some lack of respect from coworkers. Not sure about bureaucratic tasks. You all can speak to that, but it's really interesting to look at that. We also explored the question, or they explored the question of, has burnout had a negative effect on your relationships? And 65% of people said yes, because of burnout that has come into their home environment and it has affected their home life. And then they explored depression. And it's interesting because depression was a new angle that they started exploring more recently. When the studies began, they never all explored depression, right? And they found that, 67% of doctors indicated that they have colloquial depression, while 24% indicated that they have experienced, clinical depression. So again, these are just for you. The reason I shared this last time is to show you that you're in good company. Not that it's a great thing, but to say that your experience is a global experience. It's a global phenomenon. And that's why this topic is so important. And that's why it's so important that this topic of burnout is discussed the right way, rather than how it's usually discussed on social media, where people are constantly telling people, oh, you're burnt out, go work out. You're burnt out, go to coast on vacation, right? You're burnt out, take time off. Well, we need to start to explore different strategies for addressing burnout, and not the usual social media strategies that are typically provided for burnout. And then actually was interesting to look at the correlation, right? Not necessarily causation, but at least correlation between depression and burnout, where 64% of these doctors that indicated that they were depressed indicated that job burnout significantly contributed to their depression. So again, as you can see, this is an important topic. It is severe, it is pervasive, it is persistent, and it is something that needs to be, consistently addressed. And that's why I'm so grateful that we're here. I won't talk much about whether they've sought help for burnout or depression, but about half. Why doctors have not sought help for depression, and it was for burnout or depression. And it was really a little bit heartbreaking because of the feeling that depression or the trending reason that depression says something negative about me. So those are some examples of just a myriad of data points. It's a really, there's over 84 slides, right, that are covered. So I just wanted to pick a few that I thought that you might find relevant, and that I thought that would be relevant for you. So that was just a quick reminder, right, about some of the data points that we covered last time. So I'm going to pause here and see if there's any thoughts, any comments, any questions, any reactions. Put those in the chat. Let me know how it's going. Are you enjoying the conversation before we keep going? Are we moving at the right pace? Is it too slow? Is it too fast? Are you enjoying this, or do you have any questions? Give me some feedback. As I drink my kombucha, as always, this will keep me awake. Because of the time, the time in the where I am right now. Great. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Moredi. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Anjiko. Thank you, Celeste. Great. Thank you, Docs. All right. So let's go ahead and cover again the burnout myths that we covered last time at a high level. Right, so you can have a sense of a quick reminder. One of the myths we covered last time is that people believe that a vacation will cure burnout. And we indicated that a vacation cures stress, a vacation does not cure burnout. And the reason, and you'll see why when we define burnout again, right? Because stress is indicated, right, by over engagement, doing too much. So when you go on vacation, you lower your level of engagement. And so naturally, you quote unquote cure stress. However, burnout on the opposite end is all about burnout is characterized by not doing enough, disengagement, feeling emotionally blunted. And when you go on vacation, you might feel a little better for a little bit. And you might say, oh, I feel really good. But then when you go back to work, right, 2-3 weeks later, you're back to feeling exactly the way you felt before you went on vacation. Why? Because your vacation lowered your stress, but it did not address your burnout. So don't get me wrong, vacations are great. We need to take them, but they will not address the root cause of your burnout, which is the reason we're having this conversation today. All right, let's keep going. All right, so the next myth that we talked about was that some people say, hey, listen, if you want to cure your burnout, work out a little bit more or sleep a little bit more, and that will cure, your burnout. But the reality is that will not cure your burnout when we understand the definition of burnout. We covered this last time, that burnout is defined or is characterized by these three things. The first is emotional exhaustion. This is where a person just has lost energy, meaning that your body may be physically rested. You may have slept for 8 hours, but yet you still don't have energy. You still feel it's still difficult, for example, to get out of bed in order to go to work, or it's difficult to turn on that laptop if you're working on a laptop, or it's just difficult to get going because you've got emotional exhaustion. The second characterization of burnout is what's called depersonalization or cynicism. It's lost enthusiasm. And in the medical field, depersonalization is what actually is one of those symptoms where you lose a sense of feeling for your patients. They start becoming a number, right? They just start becoming, something that you check off and you lose that personal feeling. And it's interesting because I was explaining to some people that sometimes you'll go to a hospital and you'll get treated so badly by a nurse or a doctor, right? And they'll treat you like you're not human. But the reason they may be treating you that way is not because they're bad people, but because they're burned out, right? So simply that depersonalization, not seeing you as a human or having that empathy and just treating you as a number, could be a signal that really it's a cry for help. This person is out. They may not necessarily be a bad person. They just might just be burned out. And doctors and people in your field, healthcare professionals, experience depersonalization as one of the ways that we experience burnout. So if you start seeing this in yourself, you just know that it just may be a sign that you need to look at burnout. And then the last way burnout manifests itself is reduced professional efficacy. That means that you start to lose confidence in your capabilities, even if you're completely competent, you've been doing this work for a long time, but now you start to have self-doubt, you start to question your impact, you start to question your value. That's called reduced professional efficacy. And as a reminder, you do not have to experience all of these three in order to experience burnout, because burnout is a continuum, which is what we're going to be covering next. So we went into a lot of depth last time in terms of defining burnout, but that's just kind of like the headliner of what burnout is. Now, the third myth that people love to say is that, oh my gosh, if you're burned out, go ahead and manage your time better, and you're going to be able to manage burnout. You know what? I'm going to start to, and I see this a lot with my female doctor clients who are like, okay, so I'm feeling burned out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outsource. I'm going to get 3 nannies. I am going to not start doing ABC, and that's going to manage my burnout. Now, don't get me wrong. Time management is effective, but time management on its own does not address the root cause of burnout, or may not address it. So let's go ahead and see why. The reason is we looked at the 6 causes of burnout. And the 6 causes of burnout are an unmanageable workload, lack of sufficient control over your work, inadequate reward and recognition at work, an unsupportive work community, lack of fairness and consistency, and a values disconnect. So my question for you is this, right? Can going on vacation address these 6 things? No, you'll go on vacation and you'll come back to the same workload. Or you'll go on vacation and you'll come back to the same unsupportive work community. Or you'll go on vacation, but you'll still have inadequate reward and recognition, again, depending on your cause of burnout. Everybody has a different cause, right? Right? Does managing your time address this? Solve this? No, because if your workload is unmanageable, you can organize yourself all you want, but you will still be overwhelmed because you'll have more to do than you can realistically do in that period of time. Will it help? Yes. Will it address it long term? No. So I wanted to put this out. Will doing yoga, will doing meditation, will praying, will working out address these root causes? No, it won't. And that's the reason why, right, whenever I see people on social media, right, talking about the way we address burnout is go on vacation, do yoga, meditate. All those things are fantastic, by the way. I love meditation, for example. They help to center you, right? They help to manage your energy, your emotions, right? Working out, eating healthy, drinking your water, going on vacation. All of those things are excellent. But when I see people touting this on social media, I know that they've not done their research. And so I've had people come to me saying, I've done all these things and still I'm burned out. And it's because nobody really talked about how to address some of these root causes of burnout, which is part of what we're going to do today. All right, and then the last thing we covered last time, the last myth, before now we go into new material that we covered last time, is you're either burned out or not. People are like, oh yeah, you're either burned out or not. Me, I'm not burned out today. Nowadays, me, I'm not burned out, but I used to be burned out, right? But the reality is that burnout is a continuum, right? And the continuum goes from either when you're engaged, where you have no signs of burnout, right? Either of the 3 core drivers or manifestations of burnout that we talked about: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, or reduced professional efficacy, or lower sense of personal accomplishment, right? You can be engaged, or you can be in the stage called ineffective, overextended, disengaged, or ultimately burned out. And for you to ultimately burned out, you just need to exhibit emotional exhaustion and depersonalization. And if those 2 are things that you're experiencing, then you are, according to the Maslow burnout inventory, truly in burnout. So that is a summary of what we covered last time. Now we're going to go into the new stuff. But I want to check in with you first before we continue. Oh, Simon just told me I need to move faster. He has to go. People said that they have to go to work to get burned out. That's hilarious. I love it. Right. Okay. We'll try and move a little faster. All right. With that said, any other, but I love the sense of humor, by the way. Any other questions, thoughts? How are you feeling? Type in the chat how you're feeling. If you're feeling energized, at least if you're leaned in, if you're looking forward, give me back, and then we'll jump into the new material. By the way, I'm doing, if I was ever a teacher, I think I could have made a really good teacher. Right? I would have been like requiring my students to participate, and picking on the students who don't participate. So, all right, great. Thank you for all of your comments. All right, so let's go ahead now and jump into the new material and jump into the solutions. And the first thing I wanted to do in order for us to talk about solutions is I wanted to explore this concept of work-life balance. And this becomes a really big deal, especially for people who have work of passion. And for many of you, being in medicine is work of passion, right? And the problem is this whole concept of work-life balance or work-life integration is so 1999. Okay, maybe 2000, right? Because it's too simplistic. And I'll tell you why it's so simplistic. Whenever people ask the question work-life balance, they're often implying that work is a drainer and energy is a restorer. But the reality is that we spend so much time at work, and there's certain things about work that can energize us. Like for me, we're here, it's almost midnight. I typically go to bed 9, 10. I go to bed really early, 9-ish, 10-ish, right? And yet I'm here energized because work is an energizer. But then there's some other things that are at home that can be drainers. If you've got an unhealthy relationship at home, it's a drainer, right? Trying to put your kids to bed when they're young and they don't want to go to bed, that can be a drainer. It can deplete us. And that's the reason why this whole work-life balance phenomenon is a little bit too simplistic. And that's the reason I said it's 1999, right? So then what is a better solution other than trying to balance your work and your life? A better solution is energy management. And we're going to dig in deeper into energy management today because, right, time is finite. That's why trying to balance or manage time is so ineffective. There's only 24 hours a day. You cannot expand time. But what you can do is you can expand energy. And that's why it's more powerful to look at productivity and efficiency and achievement from the lens of energy. Energy can be expanded, right? You can get more energy when you go to the gym. One month you can only lift 5 pounds. The next month you can lift 10 pounds. Why? Because you expanded your energy. Right? Energy can be renewed. You can drink something and refuel yourself, and you generate energy again. And then, of course, energy can be used more efficiently. So it is more powerful to think about how can I do more in 1 hour by managing my energy rather than how can I manage my time. It is more powerful. So this paradigm shift is all about looking at work and life from a value creation perspective, asking yourself the question of how can I make each hour I put in the most productive and efficient so that if each hour is as productive and efficient as I can make it, that means that I'm doing more in my 8-hour shift, and therefore I'm spending less time at work compared to not managing my energy. That's the goal, right? And so last time I quickly covered the 4 types of energy. And we talked about the fact that one of the mistakes we make is that we don't think about efficiently producing all 4 kinds of energy, right? We only think about producing one. So for example, we've got 4 types of energy. Physical energy, which is derived from our physical body. You all are masters at physical energy and helping people regain their physical energy. But guess what? Right now, my physical energy is almost depleted. I barely slept last night. I don't know if you can see it in my eyes. They're pretty much red. I probably have, from last night to now, I probably have at best 3 hours of sleep, right? So what other energy am I pulling from, right? And there's 3 other types of energy that you can pull from, right, to drive that effectiveness, which is mental energy derived from analytical or thinking tasks. We'll talk more about it. Emotional energy and spiritual energy. Let's talk more about these 4 kinds of energy. And then we're going to have you do an assessment to see if you're heading towards an energy crisis. Did we do that assessment last time? I don't think we did. Someone let me know.
No, we didn't do it.
We did not? Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're going to see if you're heading towards an energy crisis as a doctor, and then we'll see what to do about it. So the first kind of energy that you produce is based on your physical health. How healthy you are is your physical energy. It is the energy that we produce from our bodies, right? Is physical energy. Mental energy is the energy we derive and create, right, from our thinking and analytical tasks. It's the reason why you can be physically tired. Somebody might need to mute themselves, right? But at the same time, somebody might need to mute themselves. So that's the second kind of energy. The third kind of energy is the emotional energy, which is all tied to how fulfilled you are, right? And this is the energy you derive from connecting to others. So loners, people who are not connecting to others, people who, for example, may, for whatever reason, may not be connecting with others, may actually be generating low emotional energy. And that's less energy to power them. And then the last kind of energy is spiritual energy. It has nothing to do with religion, but everything to do with your purpose, your why, the meaningfulness of what you're doing. And it's the reason why you can be physically exhausted, like now, but something is so meaningful to you, like what I'm doing, right? That you find a way, you somehow have this energy to keep going, even if you're physically exhausted. I know we've all experienced that. So let's go ahead, grab your pen and papers, and we're going to do a quiz. And I want you to see if you're headed into an energy crisis. And if we have enough people who are, we'll talk about solutions. If we don't, we'll just skip over and move on to the next topic, because we'll see if we have issues. So let's start with physical energy. We're gonna quickly. Here's how we're gonna do this. If something applies to you, check 1. If you're unsure, if you're on the fence, check 1. If it applies, you're checking 1. And for each of these categories, these 4 types of energy, you're going to tally how many 1s you have. So let's start with your physical energy, your body energy. And go ahead and write down, read this. I'll be in silence for a second and write down the number of 1s that you have. So, for example, I don't regularly get at least 7 or 8 hours of sleep, and I often wake up feeling tired. Check 1. I frequently skip breakfast, or I settle for something that isn't nutritious. Check 1. Okay. Write down your tally for body or physical energy. Let's now go into the second area. How effective are you at generating emotional energy? Go ahead and read through this and check. I frequently find myself feeling irritable, impatient, or anxious at work, especially when work is demanding. If that's true, check 1. Check the rest and get your tally out of 4. Okay? Write down your tally for emotional energy. Let's move on to the next one. Mind, mental energy. If a statement is correct, largely accurate, check 1. Write down your tally for mental energy. How many did you check? Last one, spiritual energy. How many do you check? Okay. Let's go ahead and write down your tallies. Please go ahead and write down body or physical energy, your number, mind, your number, emotional energy, your number, spiritual energy, your number. And then finally, go ahead and type in the chat. Which of these 4 energy sources did you score a 2, 3, or 4? Was it mental? Was it physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual? Type that in the chat. Okay. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Mental. I thought mental would be the lowest for many of you. I thought that your mental energy would be, because you're always thinking, you're always analyzing your patients. For some reason, I thought that would be good for most of you. Interesting. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Somebody made an interesting comment while you share. They said, medicine is a passion. This statement has been used to box us in a corner and is one of the major causes of burnout as we are expected to give more without complaining. Thank you for sharing that, right? I consider my work a passion, right? All the work that I do. And I don't see it as a box, but I could see that being a box for you doctors, right? I could see that being a challenge, or it may not be intended that way, or maybe it's that statement could be used, to get you to give extraordinary amounts of effort and time and energy. I'm sorry to hear that if that's the case. All right, let's go to the next one. Now, I want you to just understand your guide. If you scored 0 in that particular area, you've got excellent energy management skills. If you scored 1 in that particular area, you've got strong energy management skills. If you scored 2, you've got significant deficits in your energy management. If you scored 3, you have poor energy management skills in that particular area. And then the last one is if you scored 4, in that particular area, you're in a full-fledged energy crisis. And when you look at the 4 areas, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, go ahead and categorize that and look at the ones based on this that you need to prioritize. But now I want to do one last thing before we look at potential solutions. I want you to look at your overall energy. I want you to tally your scores and write down your total from the 4. What's your tally? Go ahead and tally your number. Okay, here's what it means. If you've got 0 to 3 as a total, you've got excellent energy management skills. If you're 4 to 6, you're doing well. You've got reasonable energy management skills. If you scored 7 to 10, you have significant energy management deficits. You're struggling. It's hard for you to go to work. It's hard for you from an energy perspective to get what you need to get done without being overwhelmed and exhausted. And then if you scored 11 to 16, you are in a full-fledged energy management crisis. And you need to work on it, and we'll talk about that. So here's where I say, do we need to talk about it or are we good? Right? So I would love to know your total number. How many, I want to know if we have any, where we're sitting. Are we kind of reasonable and excellent where we don't really need to cover this? Or are we kind of in significant or crisis? Energy management crisis, not health crisis. Simon, you keep pushing me. I was given 2 hours. We'll try not to take the whole 2 hours, but we might. There's so much deliciousness to cover. But this is being recorded. If you have to jump off, you could always come back for the recording, but I'll do my best. All right. So, okay, I'm seeing a lot of people between 7 and 12, but not that many. Not that many. So we won't cover it. We don't have a lot compared to the full percentage. Compared to 140 people, we only have maybe about 10 people who are in that stage, right? So we won't cover the tools, the tips, because most of you are doing really good in terms of energy management. So you got your wish, Simon. So let's just go ahead now and go into
No, kindly cover.
Okay, but let me see. Who wants it covered? If you covered, can we get at least 40 people saying yes? Let's get 40 people. We get 40 people, we'll cover it.
Yes.
Yeah, type in the chat. We're at 10. Give me 30 more. Audience participation. Didn't I tell you guys if I was a teacher? All right, if I was a professor, I would require audience participation. All right, great. Let's get 10 more. Let's get 8 more. And if we get 8 more, we'll go ahead and cover it. All right. All right. Thank you. We just hit 40. There we go. All right. Thank you. Let's go ahead and cover it then. Let's look at some solutions before we continue. As a reminder, agenda-wise, once we do this, we're going to look at, now we're going to go into some burnout solutions. All right. Okay, so the first one so now we're going to be talking about solutions for renewal and recovery, right? Because we have to, you all as doctors know, we need to go into renewal and recovery cycles. And if we interrupt your recovery cycles, then we don't get into renewal, right? So let's look at how we can continuously renew these 4 types of energy, right? So again, it's like gassing up your car, right? It's like gassing up your car for these 4 kinds of energy. Let's start with physical energy. You know, it's interesting because a lot of times we, and I expect you as doctors, are also probably very good at managing your physical energy, right? Because one of the things that's always talked about is physical energy. In fact, people measure their health and their sense of vitality often using physical energy. So I would not be surprised if these things in your physical energy don't surprise you. And again, last time we talked about sophistication bias, right? And as Kenyans, we tend to have sophistication bias where we believe that that the only things that are valuable and meaningful are those things that are complex. And that if something is simple, it cannot be that powerful, right? And yet it can also be said that simple is genius, that the answers sometimes are in the simple things that we overlook as we seek complexity. So some of these are going to be really simple, but I urge you to recognize that it is in doing these simple things that you will renew that sense of energy that you actually desire to move into generating all those kinds of energy and truly creating that vitality, that holistic vitality that you need to be effective, productive, and fulfilled, right? So physical energy, these are not surprises. You've got to sleep. Try and sleep an hour earlier at bedtime. And oh my gosh, reduce alcohol use, right? We all know that when we drink, for me, whenever I drink, even if it's wine or anything, my quality of sleep is affected. I'm that sensitive to sleep. That's how much I love my sleep, right? We know that we can reduce our stress by having cardiovascular activities 3 days a week and strength training at least once or twice, right? We know that another way we can renew our energy is we start to observe when our energy is flagging. And sometimes our energy flagging is restlessness. It's not always exhaustion, restlessness, yawning, hunger, difficulty concentrating. And then we know it's a cue to do something about it. And then, of course, we can renew our physical energy through the quality and frequency of our food. Now, these things are pretty simple and obvious, but the real question is, how much do we apply these for? Because it's one thing to intellectually know something, and you all are doctors because you are intellectually cream of the crop, right? Nyinyi ndio mlipata A's, huh? But are you applying these things, and is your physical energy flagging because you're not sleeping well? You're not managing your stress through physical activity, right? You're not responding when you observe exhaustion, and instead you're powering through, right? And you're not, you're just going out there and you're getting, what are these two hot dogs called again? These two sausages with what are they called again? The ones with what is it called? What are those two small sausages called? The ones that street guys make. All right, I'm talking to myself.
Smoky.
Yes, thank you, Smokies. Thank you. Right? As you can see, the question is, are you applying it? It's one thing to intellectually know it, it's another to apply it. I talked about this last time. And I don't know if any of you applied it because it's one of the simple things that's difficult to apply. The best way to renew your physical energy when you're at work and you're starting to notice your energy is flagging is to honor the ultradian rhythm. We talked about it last time, which is human beings are only capable of being consistently focused for 90 minutes. Only the rare human being can be consistently focused for 90 minutes without now moving into reliance on their stress hormone, adrenaline, cortisol, etc. Because what the ultradian rhythm does is that it puts us on this trial, right? At the beginning of the 90 minutes, after we've renewed, we're at the tip. And then we keep declining until we go to the bottom. When we've hit the bottom, if you don't renew about every 90 minutes or before that, you immediately flip, and now you're working on adrenaline or cortisol. And in the short term, it looks powerful. In the long term, it has diminishing returns. I think you all know about the ultradian rhythm. I'm not teaching you something you probably haven't learned in school, right? So then how do you renew and regenerate this ultradian rhythm, especially when you're busy? Maybe you're seeing patients back to back, you're busy, you're exhausted. And the answer here is every 90 minutes, you need to reset, right, your ultradian rhythm. And you do that through breathing. Breathe in for 3, breathe out for 6. When you breathe out for 6, you will clear out your cortisol in 90 seconds. This is one of those simple things that if you do it, when my students do it, it literally changes the game for them. But it's, again, another thing that we can intellectually know, but practicing is a different story. So if you're somebody whose physical energy at work has been flagging, consider setting your alarm on your phone or something to vibrate if you have one of those watches to remind you to reset your physical energy. Now, let's go quickly talk about your emotional energy and how you can renew that if this was an area you had some stress. The first is, whenever you experience negative emotion, don't just suppress it. I want you to diffuse it. When you start noticing that you're experiencing irritability, impatience, anxiety, insecurity, if you don't address those negative emotions, if you don't diffuse them, they actually drain you of your emotional energy. And then you're not as vital, you're not as energetic as you could be. And of course, fuel yourself with positive energy. And one of the best ways to fuel yourself with positive energy is to give others appreciation. These are the simple things. I don't know if we have therapists here, psychologists, they'll probably validate this, right? And then the last one I wanted to share is, whenever you're struggling, whenever you're in this loop, I'm actually going to give you 2 tips, right? Whenever you're in a loop that you notice is draining your emotional energy, maybe something bad happened at work and you're just caught in this loop, or you're upset or you're annoyed, right? Is reminding yourself, or in a bad situation, to really look at your situation through the 3 lenses, reverse lens, right? What would the other person say? Could they be right? It's amazing how if you start journaling that can actually affect the way you think, right? The long lens, in 6 months, will this matter? and it will not, drop it. And then the wide lens, how can I grow and learn from this situation? And by the way, I'm going to give you a tip that I give a lot of people and I practice myself, is that if I've had a bad day at work and I can see it draining my emotional energy and I'm just kind of like looping it. I don't know if you guys can relate. I'm just looping this thought. And if every time I loop the thought, I'm feeling upset or frustrated or irritated and etc. One of the things I say is that there's nothing more powerful than journaling. Simple. Put it on paper. It's amazing. And for me, it's more powerful than talk. If I can journal how I'm feeling and what upset me, I can actually lay it down, right? Or I've had people who loop worrying about what you're going to do tomorrow. Has any of you always looping about, oh my gosh, I need to do this, I need to do this, and maybe might even wake you up in the middle of the night? Has any of you had that kind of looping? Because that can actually drain you of your emotional energy, where you're always worried about you forgot something, maybe I won't remember to do something, like it even can keep you up at night. And whenever I have that kind of looping, one of the tips I give you, it's so powerful, is that you need to make it a practice that at the end of your workday, before you go to bed, when you're shutting down work, you take a notebook and literally brain dump everything that you still need to get done tomorrow. And it is amazing. And sometimes I even say, put it by your bedside. Simple. It is amazing. Do this and come tell me. Send me a message on social media. Literally just brain dump. Here's everything I need to do tomorrow. Just brain dump it. And it's amazing how doing that simple brain dump onto your notebook before you enter bed will allow you to have ease. It's almost like it gives your brain ease. And now you'll be able to sleep through the night. Try that if you're the kind of person who loops and worries about, oh my gosh, did I get everything done? And then come to social media and send me a message, right? Because it's going to work. So I'm trying to give you as many little practical tips as possible. All right, now let's go into your mental energy and how to renew your mental energy. This one's really big, right? This is reduce interruption, phones, email, right? Our Apple Watches, right? Respond, kind of like time blocking is a great way to control your mental energies, time blocking. Some of you may not be able to time block, but if you're independent, you can time block. You can say, I'm seeing patients from this time to this time. From this time to this time, all I'm doing is emails or sending out prescriptions, whatever you guys do, right? Every night, identify the most important thing you can do the next day. And then here's a big one I love to give. So I work with a lot of executives, and that's one of the things they let me know is that they don't have time. They go to work and it's already going. And they feel like they're always going. They go to work and it starts. And what I always say, one of the best ways to be productive is go to work or start your workday an hour earlier. Don't tell anybody. Start your workday an hour earlier. Check off all your things, right? And you'll be so productive before everybody else is in the workplace. I don't know if that applies to those of you who are practicing doctors, but getting some of that administrative tasks done in the morning, right? Without interruptions, right? To allow you to handle that. All right. And then the last one, before now we're going to burnout, is spiritual energy, renewing your spiritual energy. And this one is big. And I'll tell you why it's big, right? Because one of the things that the West does for us, that we, at least for my generation, right? Is so, because some of you here might be Gen Zs, so about your generation, or some of you might be very young millennials, right? But I would say if you're 35 and above, this probably applies, is when we were growing up, we were not taught to think about our gifts, our talents, our passions, the things that make us come alive. We were measured and our destiny was defined based on our ability to pass grades, our to get passing grades, our ability to get into university, our ability to get into certain programs, right? And unfortunately, as a result of that, for many of us as Kenyans and many Kenyans that I meet and work with, along the way, we never discovered what lights our soul on fire. And one of the biggest things that I work with people when they hit their mid-30s and older is they come to me and they say to me, Tabitha, I don't know what I'm meant to do. I have put so many hours and energy and years into this profession, and yet I'm feeling unfulfilled and I'm feeling confused about where to go. But I can't start over. Starting over is not a choice, right? And that is a problem of our system, and that's one of the places where the West may be a little bit ahead of us. But it's also interesting, I'm going to add this one point before we continue. It's also interesting that we don't have a lot of people who can teach people how to pivot without abandoning. Whenever you talk to most people and you say, I'm not happy, somebody might need to mute themselves. I don't know who. That's a sign that I'm too passionate. Let me move on, right? Or when you talk to people and you say, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, the only option they give you a lot of times is abandon and start from scratch. And you're sitting there saying, no, I can't abandon, right? I have a family. I can't go start competing with 20-year-olds and I'm 35 or 40 or 45 or 50. So abandoning is not an option, but where I am right now is not fulfilling me because we don't have enough people that have put in enough time to teach people how to pivot into fulfillment without having to start from scratch, right? So, and the reason why I got on my little soapbox is, of course, if you have children, it's important for us to start to nurture them, to help them to realize what that passion is, right? Their gift, their unique talents, the things they bring into this world that were put within them. And if they connect with that gift, then guess what happens? Not only fulfillment flows, but money flows, right? Because me, I like money, right? But right? So if we need to renew our spiritual energy, it means that we need to start connecting more and more with those sweet spot activities. Those are the things that we can do effectively with effortless absorption. When we're doing it, it doesn't mean it's not hard, but we get lost in it, right? I can get on these classes and get lost talking to you. I can get lost teaching, right? And then find ways to do more of those, not only at work, right? But also at home, right? But it's also allocating time to things that are most important to you, connecting with family, relaxing, not always doing. Very many of us have lost the art of connection. When we're at home, especially women, I'm going to call out my fellow women, we're always doing, we're always cleaning, we're always organizing, we're always making sure something is happening so that even when we're at home, we're not, or with people we love, we're not really present. And I find that with a lot of us, right? Because we've been somehow taught or conditioned to always do. And so we do it at the expense of connection. And so we do it at the expense of our spiritual energy. Again, spiritual energy has nothing to do with religion. Well, religion can support it, but it's not about religion, right? And then finally, it's about living your core values. We're going to talk about core values in a minute, right? But a lot of people don't even know their values. And let me tell you how I know that. I'll speak to people and I'll be like, what are your values? And the first thing everybody almost says is integrity. Right? Or then they say things like kindness, generosity. As if there's only like 10 core values and everybody has the same core values. So it's almost like we say in Geko, it's like, you don't know yourself. If you don't know your core values, then you cannot be powered by your spiritual energy, because spiritual energy comes from within and living in alignment with your values. For example, I would not tell you one of my core values is integrity. We'll talk a little bit more about core values. It's not, right? Because your core values are 4. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm a person of low integrity. I'm not. But I can be late for meetings, right? Those are some of the things. Integrity is a value that very few people espouse. And every company says they've got integrity as a core value, every company. And we know most companies don't have integrity. And practically everybody I talk to puts it up there. Why? Because they've not taken the time to self-explore. Who are you? If you can't understand who you are, then how can you have the spiritual energy to power you through your work and your day? All right, off my soapbox. Let's keep going now, and we'll now jump into burnout solutions. In the meantime, any comments or thoughts? Uh-oh, I got a comment that I'm going through the slides fast. So I've gotten conflicting fast and slow. All right, we have a few more minutes. I think I can hold us here maybe about 30 minutes. And one of the things I really wanted to cover, now we're going to go into burnout solutions because we defined burnout last time. I'm going to give you some solutions. There's so many out there, so many solutions. Last time I had offered a gift to give the burnout survey to 10 people, but somehow that did not materialize. So Dr. Diana and Dr. Wanjiko just know that that's on the table as well still. But I want to walk you through some solutions to burnout. They're not the end all be all. The only way we can share and or more effective solutions is to understand your unique driver of burnout. But I want to walk through some of these. And I'm also going to talk through a tough topic. And it's going to be the topic of workplace bullying. It's a tough topic. But I also want to arm you with how to handle workplace bullying. But again, you guys might say you're not interested, so we may not do it. So let's go ahead and jump in and look at some of these things. Oh, in the meantime, let me drink some kombucha. But in the meantime, if you're enjoying this, at least type enjoying. Let me see how many people are enjoying this while I drink my kombucha. Send me some energy. Send me some, but it's past midnight. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for all the enjoyings. All right, good. All right, let's go ahead and continue. I'm glad you're having fun. I'm having fun with you. Let's talk through some burnout solutions. All right, so remember, these are the 6 causes of burnout, right? And it's part of the reason we talked about what we talked about at the beginning. Why vacation, working out, eating healthy, meditation, prayer. What are the other ones we talked about? Time management don't necessarily address burnout. At the root, depending. All right, so let's look at the first driver of burnout, unmanageable workload. On the left is the definition as it's written, right? I just slapped it in there verbatim. When unmanageable workload is your driver of burnout, you feel that your workload is not manageable. There's too much work to do in too little time. The job requires you to work, or the job requires you to work outside of your skill set, but without the necessary support to develop these skills. Or your work regularly interferes with your personal life, interrupts your recovery cycles that are necessary to stay actively involved in your demanding profession. So you're just not getting your full recovery cycles. If an unmanageable workload, actually, maybe this one, type privately to me if you don't want others to see, you can choose my name. If this is an area of struggle, or this is one of your drivers of burnout, type, send me a U. Let me know. You can put in the chat, or you can do it privately, right? You can just say direct message to me if you don't want others to see it. Nobody? No use. Okay. Okay, so all of you have manageable workloads. Okay, that's good. Me, sometimes I struggle with my workload. Oh, what's happening there? Okay. All right. So, okay. So we only have one person. All right. So for the sake of this one person who sent it to me privately, okay, good. They're coming in. Okay, good, good, good. Thank you. Right. So I would actually suggest, in as much as it's possible, and this has a lot to do with boundaries, right, is you take a segmental approach to work. And let me explain this. So when it comes to work, there's two approaches. There are people who are integrators and there are people who are segmenters. Now, workplace integrators like me, we tend to blend the responsibilities of work and home. We can do work things at home and home things at work. Segmenters literally have pretty strict boundaries between work and home. When they go to work, they don't do home things. When they go home, they don't do work things. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have flexibility. I know some of you have to be on call, right? But it's about that they have much better boundaries on work and home. And it's interesting because there was a study done by Google in Ireland. And when they did this study, they required every employee, they forced everybody to be a workplace segmenter. They required every employee to leave their laptop and work cell at home for a period of about a month. They had to all leave it and go home without it. So they had to segment. They were not doing any work at home. What ended up happening is that when they were done, they found that these individuals were much more productive, right? And they were less burned out, right? So do you have the ability to segment work and home? That would be one of the things that you can do, right? In order to manage this, right? So if you're, for example, are your patients always texting you? Do you have boundaries where you're always picking up your patient calls at home, right? Are you putting good enough boundaries? Of course, there's the boundaries have to have some fluidity given the nature of the work that you do. And then another thing I want to talk about here has to do with boundaries, which we'll talk about later. A lot of people do not understand how to set boundaries at work, especially Kenyans, right? Because of the sense of authority and power, the belief that those, both ways, we believe those in power have supreme power, and those who have supreme power, who are more senior, tend to believe they have supreme power. It's just a cultural thing. So as a result of that, we struggle in terms of how to set boundaries with them, right? How to communicate something to them in a way that does not alienate them, does not hurt your relationship, but effectively puts together a boundary. I'm going to share something. I'm going to quickly share this. Do we have time? Does anybody want to hear how to do that? Do you want a quick tip or no? On how you can set those? Okay. So the way you can set that, you can set such boundaries is a very simple process I love called situation SBIR. Please write that down, SBIR. I love to teach this. When you're going to set a boundary with somebody, you start by painting the specific situation, right? Over the last 3 months, I have been on call, right? 6 times a week. That's the situation, the fact. You start by listing the fact, which is in the situation. So it's not, I'm always on call. I've been, over the last 3 months, I've been on call 50 times. That's a fact, the situation. Then you go into the behavior next in your statement. Again, I'm rushing through this, right? And in the behavior, it's the impact of that on you or others, right? So you can say something like, I feel exhausted, or I feel unproductive, or I feel, etc. at work, right? Because of this. Again, I'm rushing through this. Sorry, the behavior I feel, right? And then now you go into the impact, right? So I feel exhausted. Now you go into the impact. Now the next statement, the next piece, which is the I, is the impact. So for example, this is affecting my ability to be Empathetic with patients. I'm just making it up. You guys can think about what the impact of that behavior is, right? And then you make your request, right? Whatever your request is. You know, how might we lower my my work days from 10, my on-call days from 30 a week to 4. So I've gone through this very quickly, but I want you guys to have that formula. If somebody can type in SBIR, situation, behavior, impact request. That is one, it's a very simple but effective way of getting what you want, particularly from those in positions of power. And when I share this with a lot of people, a lot of times people don't want to deal with the SBIR. Thank you. A lot of people don't want to honor this formula because it can feel uncomfortable. But my promise to you is that if you ever need to have a difficult conversation with a superior and you write this down, you practice it, and then go and deliver it, you know, come back and tell me how magical it is. It's powerful. All right. So I wanted to share that tip. All right. And that's one of the ways you can actually use to try and draw some boundaries around your workplace, your workload without ruffling feathers. Okay. The next one is lack of sufficient control over your work. Right. Again, this is another, there's so many tips here. I'm just picking one each that I think would be most valuable. The way this is defined is this causes you to have burnout when you feel buffeted or constrained by policies and procedures that have been developed without your perspective or your participation. They constrain your professional judgment, and paperwork and meetings interfere with doing effective work. And on this, one of the tips I'd love to give is the idea of influence without authority. You see, the challenge is in Kenya, we are often not taught how to influence. And so what I'll do for you today here is I'll share with you how you know if you're effective at influence or if you're not. And there's a 3-piece criteria. Somebody please write this down. Resistance, compliance, or commitment. What are you getting? Right? So let's say, for example, you're trying to influence a certain outcome, right? If you go, the way you know that you're effective at influence is 2 things. The person either changes their behavior, they do what you need them to do, right? Or they don't, right? And then the second is their attitude as they're doing what you need them to do. So if you are effective at influencing a particular subject or situation or person, right, then the outcome you're looking for is the ultimate, which is what's called commitment. The person changes their behavior. They do what you need them to do. They move in the direction you need them to do. But secondly, they do so willingly. Their attitude is willing. They desire to. That's commitment. If you are consistently not every time, but you consistently get commitment from your seniors, they do what you need them to do. You're going to negotiate for salary and you can get that salary negotiation, right? And they do it willingly. They're literally running to HR to get you that salary increase, as an example, right? Or even your kids at home, you need them to do something and they're doing it willingly, right? And with a good attitude, and they're actually changing their behavior, then you're really good at influence, and that's commitment. But here's what we see more often. More often we see resistance. Resistance can be passive or active. Resistance includes avoiding you, by the way. Your boss says, yeah, I'm going to go get that raise for you, and then they avoid you. Why? Because it's resistance. They don't want to deal with the hard topic. We as Kenyans tend to have a lot of passive resistance, right? So that's the second way. In resistance, a person doesn't change their behavior, and on top of that, they don't take the action you need, and they don't and they're unwilling to do it. And then the one in the middle that I see a lot of is I just blanked on the word. The one I see a lot of is compliance, which is people do what you ask them to do, but they do it unwillingly. So if you're getting a lot of resistance or compliance, people are doing it, but not willingly, then you may need to work on your influence. And when you grow your influence skills, I need to move quickly. I just looked at the time. When you grow your influence skills, right, then you can actually, this is one of the things I teach my students, is actually how to have influence over decisions in the workplace. It's actually much easier than we think, including in Kenya, right? But it's learning how to influence. All right. The third one is a big one. The third driver of burnout is inadequate reward and recognition. And I hear this a lot, where you feel others ignore your contributions, or they take credit for themselves for your work. Or you feel like your pay is inadequate, the work is tedious, and supervisors are dismissive, and patients are unappreciative. It's interesting because I was actually just teaching negotiation to my class last weekend. And I have a few doctors in my class, and negotiation is always a topic they find very interesting. And they find it interesting, especially when it comes to compensation. And people always say, well, I work in government, and we've got these grades and levels, and HR puts you in these grades and levels. And when you're in government, your grades and levels as they are, and it is set, which is not always true. I've actually seen exceptions to the rules more than once. But what I'm going to say, ethically, not unethically, what I was going to say about negotiation is I want to leave you all with a negotiation tip. Because one of the most important things you can do, oops, by the way, that's a different topic. I was supposed to be talking about self-promotion at work. I just went into negotiation, but I'll finish negotiation anyway. Should I finish this negotiation thoughts or not? Let me see if I should finish the negotiation thought. Yes, okay. Is one of the classic mistakes people make in negotiation, and I see this all the time, is they assume that their past influences their negotiation. They assume that they will tout their good work that they did in the past, and that good work will get me a raise. Oh my gosh, look at everything I have achieved over the last 1 year. And then as a result, I am qualified and eligible, or I deserve a raise. How many of you have believed that line of thinking? Everything I've done in the past is what justifies my raise, is what I use to negotiate for my position. How many of you have thought that's the approach? Unaenda, unaangalia, una list out kila kitu nimefanya. Nimefanya. So now you're like, let me go now and get a raise because nimefanya so much. And then you go ask for the raise and upati raise. And worst case scenario, unapewa ka raise kadogo, and you're like, this is an insult. And that's because of the premise of negotiation. You see, when you're negotiating, people always focus on their own interests. And so when you're negotiating, you must always think about the future. The back is simply for credibility. It is proving your capability. But when you're negotiating, you must always think about what the other person desires, and then align your negotiation based on helping them achieve what they desire in the future and backing it up with your past, right? So for example, let's say I know my senior desires to become CEO one day. And in order for them to become CEO, I know they need visibility into their work. If I am going to negotiate for a raise with them, I am not talking about how I've done so many amazing things and therefore they've gotten visibility. I'm talking about the fact that if you give me this raise, you're not using this language. If you get me this raise, right, I will help you get in these specific ways. I will increase your visibility, which will move you closer to your promotion towards CEO. So whenever you're negotiating, I'm going to leave you with this tip. I urge you, one of the biggest work I do is negotiation with people, particularly salary negotiation, right? And some of you who follow me, you've seen the testimonials, mind-blowing. People are doubling and tripling their salaries in places they did not know existed. Not in government. In government, I can't help you double or triple your salary, right? But in NGOs, in international NGOs, done that, left, right, and center. People leaving government practice to go into international NGOs and tripling their salaries. That's something we've done consistently, but the answer has nothing to do with the past. So when you're moving forward to negotiate, I urge you to always think about the other person. What do they desire? And then tie. If you give me what I want, how is it going to help you get what you want? All right, that's the core of negotiation. All right. Let's see. You all need to learn how to self-promote without bragging. I have a whole class on that. I'm going to start doing a lot of Facebook Lives on these topics because I haven't been doing them for a while because I've been busy, right? And then we also need executive sponsorship, right? Oh my gosh, Kwanzaa in Kenya. In Kenya, everywhere in the world, you need executive sponsorship. But especially in Kenya, not to be confused with something unethical. If you don't have, one of the biggest barriers to your career growth is not having executive sponsors. And executive sponsors are people of power, right? Building and managing relationships with people of power. How do you build and manage relationships with people of power? It's by adding value to them. And unfortunately, a lot of us think that we can't add value to people of power in our field. And it's actually the complete opposite. Most people go to people of power to take. And I teach people, how do you understand the value you give to somebody much more senior than you? When you can give to that person, you open up a channel of executive sponsorship that will accelerate your career at a speed that you never imagined. And I'm not talking about unethical. I'm talking about roles that you're qualified for. Because executive sponsors have connection to opportunities. They're aware of what's coming down. They can mention your name in a room of decision makers. That's the power of executive sponsors. All right, let's keep going. And by the way, I always tell people this. How do you know you've got an executive sponsor versus a mentor? Because Kenya took obsessed na mentors, right? We're always like, mina taka mentor, mina taka mentor. And mentors are great, but mentors help you thrive where you are. If you're trying to grow your career and achieve great things, you need to be thinking about executive sponsors, right? The difference is this. Here's a simple example I like to give so you know if you've got mentors or executive sponsors. If you have a job posting, now job posting ilikam, it was put out there, and you had to apply, or somebody told you you had to apply and fight for that role, you likely didn't have an executive sponsor, versus you still have to work for that role. If somebody came and tapped you and said, Lydia, there's a role that's coming up in 6 months, I think it would be great for you. You should apply. You might have an executive sponsor. It's a slightly nuanced difference. Every job I had in my career, and most of my students, including those in Kenya, including doctors, when they've tapped into executive sponsorship, including for your fellow doctors, they've seen their careers accelerate in ways that they didn't imagine. Because executive sponsors put the weight of their credibility behind you. But not everybody can get an executive sponsor. To get an executive sponsor, A, you've got to have a great brand, a workplace brand. And 2, you've got to be a strong performer. Because we're talking ethical, we're not talking unethical. All right, so let's keep going. Couple more slides. How are you all doing? I'm seeing a lot of comments, thank you. Are you all enjoying this so far? We're almost done. Simon, now you see why you are not considered for CS. Una sponsor, work at your executive sponsorship. Are you all enjoying this, by the way? See, and thank you for the summaries here. And if you're not following me on Facebook, follow me. I'm going to start doing each of these topics individually and going deeper. Right now, I'm just hitting them at a high level. I'm going to be doing lives. to go deep on these topics and the hows. If any of you have done my lives, you know they're powerful. They always have hundreds of attendees because you come out of there with value. And they're free, All right, because it's a passion. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Couple more. All right. If you're experiencing, we talked about self-promotion without bragging, yeah? Those people who are like, chama cha juza kiba cha jitembeza, you're going to struggle to grow your career and get reward and recognition in the workplace. All right, and unsupportive workplace community. Now is where we're going to go into bullying. This is where I wanted to spend some time. And this is how it's listed verbatim. You may identify your organizational environment with conflict, some level of hostility, or one-upmanship. Negative community environments are susceptible to bullying, abuse, or intimidation, or they may be lonely places of isolation and closed cliques. One of the best ways to deal with this is to learn how to deal with workplace bullies. Now let's talk about workplace bullying, because this is an important topic in the US. It's legislated. Well, it's partially legislated, but it's still very difficult to prove. We actually have a workplace bullying institute, and they define bullying as workplace bullying is repeated, health-harming mistreatment by one or more employees of an employee. It's abusive conduct that takes the form of verbal abuse or behaviors perceived as threatening, intimidating, or humiliating. It's also work sabotage, or it's some combination of the above. That is the most holistic definition I've seen of workplace bullying. Now, there is a difference between a difficult employee and a workplace bully. Some people are just unpleasant. That doesn't make them a bully. There's actually I actually did 2 sessions on workplace bullying. They were probably my most attended sessions. But I'm just going to give you a snippet here, because there's 7 distinct types of workplace bullies. There's aggressive jerks, right? And you have to deal with the different, there's the chameleons, they're always changing their skin, right? You have to deal with the different kinds of bullies differently. But we don't have a whole lesson to go into workplace bullying and how to deal with it. But I'm going to give you some high-level tips, and I want everybody to put this in your back pocket. Not because I'm saying that you're experiencing workplace bullying, but because many people experience it, and there's a lot of advice out there, bad advice, about how to deal with workplace bullying. And remember, workplace bullying can lead to burnout. All right? So I'm just going to give you some high-level tips on dealing with workplace bullies. Okay? Now, before we do that, why do people get bullied? There's a few reasons, right? Wrong place, wrong time. You just happen to be at the wrong place. The bully put their whatever on you, and you are the victim, right? Or sometimes you ignored warning signs. There were signs that this person would be a bully, but instead of kind of like navigating away from them, you kept going towards the bully, right? Sometimes you've got something the bully wants, right? And so they bully you, or they consider you a threat and they bully you, or they think you lack allies. This is why community at work matters so much. A lot of times, if people think you lack allies, you are a much easier target to these bully personalities. Remember, we're not confusing bullying with just, mtu attitude and bias. Some people just have a bad attitude, right? And here's another one. You might get bullied because you put up with bad treatment. You don't know how to draw the boundaries. And unfortunately, for many of us, we were not taught how to draw boundaries, especially when we've got people of authority, right? So before we go into the number 1 tip I want to leave you with of how to deal with a workplace bully, I want to mention 7 mistakes I see all the time. People are always talking about these. Whenever you talk to a friend, if you've got a workplace bully, they're giving you these tips, but these tips are just like terrible tips. So I want to talk about these mistakes so you don't make them. So the first mistake is denying that you're being bullied. So you keep moving towards the bully, you're not willing to accept it. We're just going to go through this quickly. Colluding with them in your brain, like saying, oh my gosh, giving them validation in your brain. Yeah, they have a point, right? I know they told me I'm an idiot. And you know what? They have a point because maybe in that situation, I was kind of idiotic. Colluding with your bully in your brain, right? Expecting the bully to change. Bullies don't change, right? Now, again, there's different types of bullies, but expecting them to change and giving them chance after chance, and then you keep experiencing bullying behavior, stooping to the bully's level. Sometimes that means fighting them, right? So now you are throwing insults at each other because now you're like, oh, you can't bully me. So now you're there fighting with the bully, and that's exactly what the bully wants. They want to engage, and bullies are excellent at winning. They're excellent at winning, right? Pleasing, giving in, or appeasing to the bully in order to just get rid of it. So you appease it, and now you feed the bully, and now the bullying continues. Can't tell you enough how many people I've worked with who appeased bullies before they met me and they had to leave their job. Believing the lies and chasing Trump type issues, like they come, they lie to you about something and you go believe it and you go chase it and create chaos and drama, right? And then finally letting the bully isolate you. Because when you're isolated, you are in the perfect place for a bully. So I'm just going to leave you with one tip, the key tip. And this is what I want to leave you with to disarm a bully during a conversation. Because this, if you're experiencing bullying, it can affect your burnout, can drive burnout. And it's ask a question. I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say I'm the bully and I yell at you. Is that all you've done? The whole time that's all you did? The first thing you could say is, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, it took longer than I planned. You showed me that you're defensive. So I managed to put you in the defensive. Or you could say, you could attack me back. What are you talking about? You've no clue. I've been here all night. Now you've fallen into their game. You're playing their game. Or you could flip it. And you could say, what else would you like me to work on next? Now you've taken the lead position and you're forcing them to answer your question. And it shifts the energy. It's a secret. Let me show you one more. Bully yells, you are an irritating fool. Nobody's gonna yell that at you, but right, you could yell back, oh my God, you're the irritating one. You've simply shown them that they can push your buttons. You've opened up the space for bullying, right? Or you could say, I'm not irritating, that's not true. Now you've shown them you're defensive. Or you could ask them specifically, could you help me understand what was irritating specifically? Again, you've turned the table using a question. Now you're forcing them to respond to you. I want you guys to always remember this. One more. Someone says, oh my gosh. No, we won't do this because of time. All right. So that's that. So two more, and then we're done. Lack of fairness and consistency. That's another driver of burnout. You feel that arbitrary workplace decisions are delivered without explanation or rationale. People are unsure of receiving fair treatment on decisions regarding resources, compensation, or career development. It just doesn't feel fair. You may find that people are rude to one another, show little appreciation for diverse values, lifestyles, or cultures. We talked about negotiation. It helps you get what's fair. And we also talked about executive sponsorship. It helps you get what's fair. Again, remember to Dr. Wanjiko, I've got 10 of these assessments I can give out. If you have a name, if you have 10 people, because the assessments will show you of these 6 drivers, what are yours, what's driving your specific burnout, and give you very specific tools because there's so much out there. So I'm hitting this high level. And then the last one is the values disconnect. This is where you feel a profound disconnect between your personal values and the organization's values or actions, right? You find like your work feels trivial or meaningless, maybe less likely for you guys, right? Or to a great extent, doing what you're asked to do at work is actually destructive or unethical. So it's a values disconnect. And this is where we talked about core values. Let me tell you about values. Somebody please write this down. There are 4 types of values. And when we go into what we talked about, knowing yourself, working in alignment with your values, especially your workplace values. There's core values. These are the three that are how you show up consistently. Then there's permission to play values. These are the values that somebody must exhibit, even your boss, for them to play in your space. So for example, if you went to interview for a job and they're not exhibiting permission to play values, right? Let's say ethics or integrity is your permission to play value. And you go somewhere and you notice, gosh, this organization is unethical. You wouldn't take that job because they don't have permission to play. These are the minimum values that others might have in order to be in your space, for you to allow them in. Then there's aspirational values, what you desire to become, to grow into. And then here's a big one, there's accidental values. A lot of us have accidental values, which is the things that we become that are negative, right? But they become a part of who we are. I'll give an example, gossip. It's an accidental value, but now it's your value. If you're always gossiping, that's one of your core values. It's one of your values. Your gossiping is your value, and yet it's a negative one. So identifying your negative values. Complaining is another example of values. If you're always complaining and seeing the negative of things, always complaining, that's one of your values. These are the values you're living, right? So it's really core to understand your values so that you can make sure that A, you're not fighting every fight that you don't need to fight at work, leading to burnout, but B, you're making sure you're staying aligned with your values. So my friends, today we've covered a lot. And we started by looking at some of the data and the statistics around Dr. Burnout and depression. Then we went ahead and we looked at energy. And we even did the 4 types of energy that you can generate that fuel you, that bring you fulfillment and productivity at work. And we looked at a quiz to assess whether you are heading towards an energy crisis. Then we looked at some very simple ways to actually renew your energy in each of the 4 areas. And I would recommend that if one of those energy areas is waning, look at the tips that we looked at, the simple things, and start doing them. Don't do many, just do one at a time. Focus on one energy level and then one energy area, and then you'll see what happens. And then we close by just, again, revisiting the 6 drivers of burnout, because we looked at what burnout is, and that a vacation won't give you burnout. And then we talked about some high-level tips in terms of how to manage some of those things that seem uncontrollable in the workplace. Now, these are very, very complex topics and individualized, right? But I hope that this has at least opened your eyes. I do hope you'll follow my Facebook page, because I'm going to start doing these series. They're typically 1-hour sessions. We take one topic, like we could take negotiation and we go deep, or we could take influence and we go deep, or we could take creating boundaries at work and we go deep. So we take one topic at a time. I do these are free live sessions for those that know me, and I'm going to start doing these series. And you coming to these sessions is really going to help you address your burnout, right? Because they're going to help you start addressing these 6 things. So with that said, I'm going to see if there's any questions, but I want to thank Dr. Diana. I want to thank Dr. Wanjiko for inviting me. And if this was valuable, at least type valuable for me, so I know we're almost at 1 a.m. I know that this was meaningful to you, and let me know if it was enjoyable to you, if you're walking out with something. Thank you for engaging and typing all of that. This background photo, somebody said this. Yeah, it's a woman. Can you see? Yeah, she's up there. Yeah. Great, thank you. Yes, Facebook is Tabitha and Njeri. Thank you for all those amazing comments. Dr. Diana, Dr. Wanjiko, unless there's any questions, maybe you could come out and close us out, but thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Coach Tabitha and Njeri. As always, premium quality, always. Thank you so much for your time. I'd also want to take this time to recognize a few special groups. I'd want to recognize the undergraduate MBCHB University of Nairobi Year 5 students. I'd want to appreciate colleagues from the Aga Khan University Hospital, residents of ObgYN. I'd also want to give a shout out to our lecturers at the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, the University of Nairobi. I'd want to recognize consultants from the Kenyatta National Hospital. I'd want to specially mention the chair of the Junior Doctors Network under the World Medical Association. Thank you so much for joining in. I'd want to recognize the chair of the Kenya Pediatric Association, the president of the Kenya Medical Association, and he came alongside him some governors from the National Governing Council, Kenya Medical Association. I'd want to recognize representatives and members of our member society, Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society, KOGS, and also a very special mention to a representative from the World Health Organization, all the way from Zambia. Thank you very much for joining. Also, to everybody else who I have not mentioned, feel free, please feel very, very welcome and feel very recognized and appreciated. Thank you very much again, Coach Tabitha Njeri. I do not see any questions on the chat box or on the Q&A. Her social media Facebook page is Tabitha Njeri. If you just search out Tabitha Njeri, you should be able to find her. She is as she is, you can see. Her picture is exactly as you can see her on the video, so you should be able to see her. Facebook page is Tabitha Njeri. And then we had 10 people that you needed to award. So allow me to just quickly read out the names and then we can bring this meeting to a close. So Willis Ocheng, Grace Wanjiko, Janet Koros. Those are 3. There's Salman. I hope I said your name right. There is Jacqueline Othiambo, Brian Onyancha. Definitely we'll give one to Simon Kigondu. He really he put our chat ongoing and it was lit. So thank you for attending. I think I did mention Salman, yes. I'd also want to give it to Joseph Karaoke and Job Gayo. I think those are 10. So if I've mentioned your name, please make sure that you write on the chat your email address, and I will quickly be able to get those email addresses through to Coach Tabitha Njeri, and you should be able to get the package that she is offering. Otherwise, this has been the Wellness Forum, brought to you by the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, the University of Nairobi. I have been your moderator, Dr. Aida Wanjiko, and together with our overseer and patron, Dr. Diana Ondieki, Senior Lecturer, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, University of Nairobi, we take this opportunity to thank you once again for tuning in, for joining in. We see you again next month without fail. Our next guest speaker is ready for you. That will be on the 6th of September, 2024. It's always on the first Friday of the month. We start at exactly 7 a.m. and really looking forward to having you all join us. Otherwise, maybe I would want to bring our patron on board to just say a few words, and then she can also close the meeting for us. Dr. Diana, over to you.
Thank you very much, Aida. Thank you very much, Coach Tabitha, for a very insightful session. As always, excellent content. So it's my hope that people are actually going to practice what you've said. And should they be able to get an opportunity to repeat the tests, it's my hope that those ones who found themselves with full-out crises or significant issues will be able to find that they've gotten a level of improvement. So thank you very much, Coach Tabitha. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and have a good day.